September 1953. The briefing room at Kimpo Air Base stinks of stale coffee and cigarette smoke. American intelligence officers lean back in folding chairs, half listening to another report about North Korean propaganda. Someone cracks a joke about Stalin's ghost pilots. Laughter ripples through the room. The war is winding down. Armistice talks drag on in Panmunjom, 20 miles north. Everyone knows it's over except for the paperwork. The real concern isn't MiG-15s anymore. It's rotation schedules and who gets home first. Then Lieutenant Commander Williams stands up with a folder. He's not smiling. "Gentlemen, we've lost another Sabre." The room doesn't quiet. Sabres go down. It happens. The F-86 pilots give better than they get. Everyone knows the numbers. 10-to-1 kill ratio, maybe better. The MiG-15 is fast, sure. But American pilots are better trained, better disciplined, better everything. Williams opens the folder. Captain Morrison didn't come back yesterday. Radio contact ceased at 20,000 feet over the Yalu. No distress call, no explosion. 1 second he's there, next second he's gone. Flameout, someone offers. Happens. Morrison had 3,000 hours, Williams says. He doesn't flame out. The intelligence officer at the head of the table, a major whose name no one remembers, waves a hand dismissively. The MiG-15 is a copy of a British engine in a tin can, Soviet engineering. We've seen the performance reports from our pilots. It's dangerous because there are hundreds of them, not because it's good. Nods around the room. This makes sense. Quantity over quality. The Soviet way. Besides, the major continues, if their fighter was actually superior, we'd know. Our engineers would know. We'd have captured one by now, studied it. He taps ash into a dented tray. 3 years of war, and not one intact MiG-15 in American hands. They crash them deliberately. They blow them up before we can reach the wreckage. That tells you everything. They know we'd reverse engineer it in a week and build something better. More laughter. Lighter now. The tension breaks. Williams doesn't sit down. "Sir, pilots are reporting the MiG can outclimb us below 20,000 feet. Outturn us in certain configurations. And the cannon is inaccurate," the major interrupts. "Spray and pray. We've been over this. Sir, a single 37 mm shell took the tail off Baker's Sabre last week. And Baker made it back, didn't he?" "Barely." The major stands, signaling the meeting's end. "Gentlemen, the MiG-15 is a problem of numbers, not quality. Soviet propaganda wants us to believe they've built a superfighter. They want us scared. Don't give them the satisfaction." Chairs scrape. Men file out, already thinking about lunch. Williams stays behind, staring at the folder. Inside are pilot debriefs, technical estimates, gun camera footage analysis. The data doesn't match the confidence. Something is wrong. The MiG-15 shouldn't perform the way it does. Copied British engines shouldn't produce that thrust-to-weight ratio. Rushed Soviet manufacturing shouldn't create that kind of climb rate. But challenging the narrative means admitting American pilots are dying against a superior opponent. Means admitting the enemy built something better. Means Pentagon hearings and budget battles and questions no one wants to answer. So the reports get filed. The meetings continue. The jokes keep coming. Outside, the afternoon sun bakes the tarmac. Sabres sit in revetments, armed and fueled for the next patrol. Their pilots don't know the intelligence officers are laughing. Don't know the technical assessments are guesswork wrapped in confidence. Then the tower receives a transmission in broken English that shouldn't exist. The radio crackles. Tower operators at Kimpo Air Base freeze mid-conversation. American airfield. American airfield. I am fighter pilot. Request landing. The accent is thick. The phrasing is wrong. And the transmission is coming from the north. Radar shows a single contact, low and fast, crossing the demarcation line into South Korean airspace. No transponder, no flight plan. Just a silver dot racing south at 400 knots. Unidentified aircraft state your intentions. I land, I defect. Do not shoot. The tower chief grabs binoculars, scans the northern sky, sees nothing yet. His hand hovers over the alert button. One press scrambles interceptors. One press could start an international incident if this is a trap. Unidentified aircraft, identify your type. Static. Then, MiG-15. The room erupts. Impossible. MiG-15s don't defect. They don't request landing clearance. Soviet aircraft either attack or they don't cross the line at all. Every radar operator, every controller, every clerk in the tower is suddenly pressed against windows searching. Then they see it. Silver. Sleek. Unmistakable swept wings catching September sunlight. The MiG-15 drops from 3,000 feet, gear already down, approach steady as a training flight. No evasive maneuvers, no hesitation. Just a clean descent profile toward Kimpo's main runway, like this is Vladivostok on a Tuesday morning. Jesus Christ, he's really doing it! Sirens wail across the base. Jeeps race toward the flight line. Anti-aircraft crews track the MiG, but hold fire. Orders are suddenly very unclear about shooting at an enemy fighter that's trying to surrender. F-86. Sabres scramble anyway, clawing for altitude, but the MiG is already in the pattern. The landing is textbook. Wheels kiss asphalt. The nose drops. Speed bleeds off. Thrust reversers howl. Except MiG-15s don't have thrust reversers, so the pilot rides the brakes hard, trailing rubber smoke down 6,000 feet of concrete. The fighter rolls to a stop near the tower. Engine still running. Canopy still closed. Ground crews don't know what to do. This isn't in any manual. Do you approach an enemy aircraft? Do you wait? What if it's rigged to explode? What if the pilot has a bomb? What if this is psychological warfare? Some elaborate trick to spread fear? A colonel arrives in a jeep, shouting orders no one can hear over the MiG's engine scream. MPs form a perimeter, rifles raised, fingers on triggers. The tension is unbearable. Every second the canopy stays closed feels like an hour. Then the engine spools down. The whine drops to a whistle, then silence. The canopy opens. Steam vents from the cockpit. The MiG's environmental system is crude, and the pilot has been flying in what amounts to a barely pressurized oven. A figure stands up slowly, hands clearly visible, no sudden movements. He's young, maybe 21, maybe younger. North Korean Air Force flight suit, no sidearm, no survival pack. He climbed into this aircraft with nothing but fuel and nerve. He raises both hands higher, steps onto the wing. His boots are Soviet-made. His helmet is Soviet-made. But his face is pure desperation and relief, the expression of someone who just bet everything on a single impossible choice. An interpreter runs forward, shouting in Korean. The pilot responds, voice shaking, words tumbling over each other. The interpreter turns pale. "Sir," he calls to the colonel. He says his name is No Kum-sok, Lieutenant, North Korean Air Force. He's requesting asylum. The colonel stares. "Ask him why." The interpreter relays the question, listens, turns back. He says he wants to be free, and he brought us a gift. The canopy opens, and the pilot climbing out is wearing the wrong uniform. No Kum-sok has been planning this for 8 months. Not 8 months of vague daydreaming. 8 months of calculated preparation. Memorizing flight schedules. Studying weather patterns. Learning which patrol routes cross nearest to South Korean airspace. Waiting for the exact combination of circumstances that won't get him killed before he clears the demarcation line. He is 21 years old. His father was executed by communists during the war for owning land. His family's property was seized. His mother fled south, and he hasn't seen her since 1950. The North Korean Air Force gave him a MiG-15 because he scored highest in his pilot training class, and not because anyone trusts him. They shouldn't have. Every training flight, he calculates. The Yalu River to Kimpo Air Base, 83 miles. The MiG-15's combat radius, 400 miles, depending on altitude and throttle settings. If he takes off with full internal fuel and doesn't waste time dogfighting, he can make it with reserves to spare. The problem is timing. Defect too early in a patrol and other MiGs will chase him down. Defect too late and Sabres might shoot first, ask questions later. He needs to cross alone, fast, and ideally when American pilots are on the ground refueling. September 23, 1953. Morning patrol assignment, solo navigation exercise along the coast. No wingman, no formation, just no in a MiG-15 and open sky. He waits until he's 40 miles from base, banks south, pushes the throttle to maximum continuous power. The MiG-15 accelerates like a rocket, 6,000 pounds of thrust against 8,000 pounds of airframe. The horizon tilts. The altimeter unwinds. No drops from patrol altitude to 200 feet above the Yellow Sea, where radar coverage is weakest and visibility is worst. His hands are steady on the stick. His breathing is controlled. He's practiced this mentally so many times that the actual defection feels like repetition, like he's already done it, and his body is just catching up to the inevitable. Radio silence. Navigation by coastline and compass. The morning sun behind him, South Korea ahead. Every second he expects interceptors. Every second he expects radio calls demanding his position. Every second he expects the MiG systems to fail, because Soviet engineering is brilliant until it isn't. Nothing happens. He climbs at the last possible moment. 15 miles from Kimpo, he breaks radio silence. In the English he learned secretly, the language North Korean pilots are forbidden to study. American airfield. American airfield. I am fighter pilot. Request landing. He doesn't know if they'll understand. Doesn't know if they'll believe him. Doesn't know if they'll shoot him down out of reflex, or confusion, or standard operating procedure. The response comes in clear American English. They're talking to him. They haven't fired. He lowers the landing gear. The MiG-15's hydraulics groan. The system is temperamental, and gear malfunctions kill pilots regularly. But the indicator lights show 3 greens, wheels down and locked. Kimpo Air Base spreads below him. Runways, hangars, rows of F-86 Sabres, American flags. Freedom. No has never landed at an unfamiliar airfield. North Korean training doesn't waste fuel on cross-country navigation. But the runway is enormous compared to the dirt strips up north, and there's no anti-aircraft fire, no MiGs on his tail, no political officer waiting to arrest him for deviationist thinking. He flares, touches down, brakes hard. The MiG-15 shudders and complains, but holds together. When he opens the canopy, the air smells different. Not better, just different. American cigarettes and jet fuel and something else he can't identify. Possibility, maybe. MPs surround him. An interpreter shouts questions. No raises his hands and tries to explain in broken English that he's been waiting his entire adult life for this moment. He doesn't know the Pentagon has offered $100,000 for exactly what he just delivered. Operation Moolah launched 4 months earlier in April 1953. The concept was simple. Offer communist pilots a fortune to defect with their aircraft. $100,000 for a MiG-15, more money than most Americans would see in a lifetime. An unimaginable sum for a North Korean or Chinese pilot earning pennies. $50,000 for older models. Political asylum guaranteed. New identity if desired. Freedom. American C-47 transports flew over North Korean airspace, dropping millions of leaflets. The papers fluttered down onto airfields, villages, military installations. Bold text in Korean, Chinese, and Russian. Reward for delivery of modern jet fighter to South Korea. Photographs showed smiling defectors with stacks of cash. Testimonials promised fair treatment. Radio broadcasts repeated the offer every night. Psychological warfare officers believed someone would bite. One pilot, one aircraft, one chance to crack open the MiG-15 secrets. Silence. June became July. July became August. 0 defections. The leaflets became latrine paper. The radio broadcast became background noise. Intelligence analysts wrote pessimistic reports suggesting communist air forces had better ideological control than anticipated, or the pilots didn't believe the offer was genuine, or that the fear of retribution against families outweighed financial incentive. The operation wasn't officially canceled, but enthusiasm died. The war was ending anyway. Armistice negotiations were concluding. Maybe America didn't need a MiG-15 anymore. Then No Kum-sok lands at Kimpo on September 21st. The interrogation begins immediately. CIA officers, Air Force intelligence, technical specialists, everyone wants answers. They expect a sophisticated operative who studied the leaflets and calculated the reward. They expect someone who speaks decent English and understands American culture. Instead, they get a skinny 21-year-old who learned English from smuggled books and has never seen Operation Moolah's leaflets. "You didn't know about the reward?" the interrogator asks. "What reward?" They show him the leaflet. No stares at it, uncomprehending. $100,000. He didn't defect for money. He defected because his father was murdered and his mother fled south, and he wanted to live somewhere that didn't execute people for owning rice paddies. The Americans exchange glances. This is either the most honest defector in history or the most elaborate cover story ever constructed. "Why today?" they ask. "Why September 21st? "Solo patrol," No explains through the interpreter. "No wingman, good weather, enough fuel." "You planned this?" 8 months. The interrogation continues for hours. No's story doesn't change. Consistent details, verifiable facts, no ideological speeches, no propaganda talking points. Just a kid who wanted freedom and happened to fly the most valuable aircraft in communist inventory. Outside, the MiG-15 sits under armed guard. Engineers circle it like priests around a holy relic. This is the intelligence coup of the decade. 3 years of Korean War, and not one intact MiG-15 in Western hands. Soviet pilots crashed them deliberately. Chinese pilots destroyed them before capture. North Korean pilots flew them until mechanical failure turned them into scrap. Now America has one in perfect condition. Fueled, armed, every system functional. The Pentagon authorizes the reward payment despite No's ignorance of the offer. $100,000. He's earned it. More importantly, the propaganda value is incalculable. Proof that Operation Moolah worked, even if accidentally. Proof that communist pilots want freedom. Proof that American promises are real. But beneath the celebration, a darker realization spreads through intelligence circles. If Operation Moolah ran for 4 months and only succeeded by accident, if millions of leaflets produce 0 intentional defections, then communist air forces have better operational security than anyone imagined. Which means American pilots have been dying against a fighter they've never truly understood. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. 48 hours after the defection, the MiG-15 arrives in pieces, crated aboard a C-124 Globemaster transport. Engineers uncrate it in a secure hangar with armed guards at every entrance. No photographs, no press. Just fluorescent lights and the smell of Cosmoline preservative and 24 specialists who've waited 3 years for this moment. Chief Engineer Harold Watson circles the aircraft slowly, taking notes. The MiG-15 is smaller than he expected. Lighter. The airframe is simple, almost crude compared to American standards. Rivets are hand-set. Panel gaps are inconsistent. The cockpit looks like it was assembled in a hurry. "This is what's been killing our pilots?" someone mutters. Watson doesn't answer. He's staring at the engine. The Klimov VK-1 is a copy of the British Rolls-Royce Nene, reverse-engineered after the UK sold engines to the Soviets in 1946. Britain thought they were selling outdated technology. The Soviets thought differently. Watson runs calculations. Thrust-to-weight ratio, 0.76. The F-86. Sabre manages 0.68. The MiG-15 accelerates faster, climbs faster, reaches higher altitudes with less effort. Raw physics favors the enemy. Get the weapons bay open. Technicians remove panels. The armament layout is brutal. One 37mm Nudelman N37 cannon and two 23mm Nudelman Richter NR23 cannons. American Sabres carry 6 50-caliber machine guns, excellent for dogfighting, inadequate for killing heavy bombers. The 37mm cannon fires shells the size of beer bottles. One hit can sever a B-29's wing. Test firing reveals the weapon is inaccurate beyond 800 yards, but at close range it doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to hit once. "They built this to kill our bombers," Watson says quietly. The realization spreads through the hangar. The MiG-15 isn't a dogfighter. It's an interceptor. Every design choice, high climb rate, heavy cannons, simplified controls, optimizes for one mission: reach American B-29s before they can drop nuclear weapons on Soviet cities, then destroy them with overwhelming firepower. American intelligence assumed the MiG-15 was a fighter like the Sabre, assumed it would perform like the Sabre, assumed Soviet engineering was inferior because Soviet manufacturing was crude. Wrong on all counts. Hydraulic specialists examined the flight control systems. The MiG-15 uses hydraulic boosters that American aircraft won't adopt for another 5 years. The ailerons respond faster. The elevator authority is stronger. Soviet pilots can outmaneuver Sabres at low speeds not because they're better trained, but because their aircraft physically responds quicker. The fuel system is simple but elegant. Internal tanks, no complicated plumbing. Center of gravity stays stable throughout the flight envelope. American designers learned more in 2 days than 3 years of combat reports provided. Wind tunnel testing begins. The MiG-15's swept wings generate lift efficiently at high altitudes where American straight-wing bombers struggle. The airframe is stressed for 9G maneuvers, more than most pilots can physically withstand. Soviet engineers built margin into every system. Then test pilot Tom Collins straps in for the first American flight. Engine start is rough. The Klimov VK-1 vibrates badly at idle. Quality control issue, probably. Collins taxis out, runs through pre-flight checks. Everything responds normally until he pushes the throttle forward. The MiG-15 leaps off the runway. Acceleration is violent. Rate of climb is absurd. Collins levels at 20,000 feet and tries basic maneuvers. The aircraft is responsive, almost twitchy. Visibility is poor. The canopy framing blocks sight lines. The gun sight is crude, but the performance is undeniable. This aircraft can do things the Sabre cannot. Collins pushes into high-speed flight. Mach 0.8, 0.85, 0.86. The stick goes stiff. The nose drops. Warning signs flash through his mind, but he's committed now, diving through 0.9 Mach, and the MiG-15 does something impossible. It tries to kill him. The engineering reports confirm every pilot's nightmare. The MiG-15 was purpose-built to kill one specific aircraft. The MiG-15's design story begins in 1946 with British hubris and Soviet desperation. Britain's Labour government, believing the Cold War hasn't started yet, sells Rolls-Royce Nene jet engines to the Soviet Union. 55 engines. Complete technical documentation. The Nenni produces 5,000 pounds of thrust, double anything the Soviets have domestically. Stalin's engineers disassemble the first engine within hours of delivery. Measurements, metallurgical analysis. Reverse engineering begins immediately. Within months, the Klimov VK-1 emerges, a Soviet copy with minor modifications and slightly reduced reliability. The engine is perfect. The airframe is the problem. Soviet intelligence knows America is developing the B-29 superfortress into the B-50, which will carry nuclear weapons deep into Soviet territory. Stalin demands an interceptor that can stop them. Not fight them. Stop them. Completely. Permanently. Designer Artem Mikoyan receives the assignment. His requirements are specific. Reach 45,000 feet. Climb fast enough to intercept bombers before they drop weapons. Carry cannons powerful enough to destroy a B-29 with minimal hits. Mikoyan chooses swept wings. German research captured after World War II shows they delay compressibility problems at high speed. The wing sweep is 35 degrees, aggressive for the era. Wind tunnel testing confirms the design will work. But there's no time for extensive development. American bombers are already flying. Soviet cities are already vulnerable. Mikoyan's team builds the first prototype in 18 months, a development timeline that would be impossible in the West. The shortcuts show. Manufacturing quality is inconsistent. Avionics are basic. Pilot comfort is an afterthought. The ejection seat is a canvas sling. The pressurization system barely functions. The cockpit heating is a joke. Pilots fly in sheepskin suits even in summer. None of it matters. The MiG-15 does exactly what Stalin demanded. First flight, December 1947. Production begins immediately. By 1950, thousands roll off Soviet assembly lines. The aircraft is cheap, one-third the cost of an F-86 Sabre. It's simple. Mechanics can service it with basic tools, and it's effective. The design philosophy is brutal efficiency. Heavy cannons instead of machine guns because bombers don't dodge. High climb rate instead of range because interceptors don't need to fly far. Responsive controls instead of stability because killing bombers requires aggressive maneuvering. American B-20s encounter MiG-15s over Korea in November 1950. The results are catastrophic. Bombers flying at 25,000 feet, previously untouchable, face fighters that can reach 30,000 feet and attack from above. The 37mm cannons tear through B-29 formations. Entire squadrons turn back without reaching targets. Strategic bombing halts. America's nuclear deterrent suddenly has a counter. The MiG-15 forces American bomber crews to fly night missions at low altitude, where anti-aircraft fire and navigation errors kill more airmen than fighters. The psychological impact is enormous. American strategic air power, the weapon that won World War II, is suddenly vulnerable. Soviet training doctrine is equally brutal. Pilots learn to attack in slashing dives, fire the 37mm cannon in 1-second bursts, then escape before Sabres can react. No prolonged dogfighting. No aerobatics, just efficient killing. The doctrine works. Chinese and North Korean pilots flying MiG-15s claim hundreds of American aircraft. Some claims are propaganda. Many are real. But Soviet commanders notice something during training. Experienced pilots report control difficulties above Mach 0.85. Minor at first. Stick stiffness. Slight nose drop. Nothing catastrophic. Then pilots start dying. High-speed dives turn into uncontrollable spins. Aircraft tumble from the sky. Wreckage shows no mechanical failure. Just pilots who pushed too hard and paid the price. Soviet engineers investigate. Test flights confirm the problem. Above Mach 0.86, the MiG-15's aerodynamics change. Airflow over the swept wings separates. Control surfaces lose authority. The aircraft enters a departure regime that defies recovery. The solution is simple. Don't fly that fast. Soviet commanders issue new doctrine. Maximum speed is Mach 0.85. Violating this limit is forbidden. Pilots who survive violations are court-martialed for reckless flying. Test pilots push the captured MiG to its limits and find the one weakness Soviet pilots never reported. Tom Collins dives the MiG-15 through Mach 0.9 and the aircraft stops obeying. The stick freezes, not stiff, frozen, like the control cables turned to iron. He pulls back with both hands. Nothing. The nose drops further. The horizon disappears below the instrument panel. Altitude unwinds. 20,000 feet. 18,000. The airframe shudders violently. Collins checks for structural failure, but the wings are still attached, the fuselage intact. The aircraft isn't breaking apart. It's departing controlled flight. The MiG-15 snaps left. Not a roll, a snap, violent and instantaneous, like invisible hands grabbed the wings and twisted. Collins jams right rudder. No response. The world spins. Sky, ground, sky, ground. G-forces slam him against the canopy. He chops throttle, pulls the stick into his lap, stomps both rudder pedals simultaneously, trying anything. The spin tightens. Rotation rate increases. His vision grays at the edges. 12,000 feet. The ground is very clear now, very detailed. He can see individual trees. Collins stops fighting, releases the controls completely, hands off the stick, feet off the rudders. The MiG-15 spins for 2 more rotations, then the nose drops through the vertical and airflow reattaches to the wings. Recovery at 8,000 feet. Collins limps back to Wright-Patterson with his hands shaking and his flight suit soaked with sweat. The test report is 5 pages long. The conclusion is 2 sentences. Aircraft exhibits catastrophic handling characteristics above Mach 0.86. Recovery requires altitude and pilot experience. Most combat situations will not provide. Engineers investigate. Wind tunnel models. Computational analysis. High-speed cameras mounted on chase planes filming subsequent test flights. The problem is aerodynamic, not mechanical. The MiG-15's swept wings generate shock waves at high subsonic speeds. The shock waves disrupt airflow over the horizontal stabilizer. Control surfaces stop working. The aircraft becomes aerodynamically unstable with no warning except speed. Soviet test pilots discovered this in 1948. Recommended design modifications were overruled because Stalin wanted production immediately, and redesigning the tail would delay fielding by 6 months. So Soviet commanders buried the problem in doctrine. Maximum speed Mach 0.85. Violate at your own risk. Most pilots obeyed. Some didn't. The ones who didn't became statistics, pilot error, vertigo, spatial disorientation. Anything except admitting the MiG-15 had a fatal flaw. Soviet pilots over Korea received the same doctrine. Don't exceed Mach 0.85. Don't dive vertically. Don't pursue Sabres into high-speed flight regimes. The orders were strict. Commanders didn't explain why. Chinese and North Korean pilots received even less information. Just speed limits with no justification. Many assumed it was distrust. Soviet officers withholding performance from lesser allies. Some violated the limits anyway, trying to prove themselves. They died. Their commanders wrote reports blaming inexperience or poor discipline. The pattern repeated for 3 years. American pilots noticed MiG-15s breaking off attacks at specific speeds, but assumed it was tactical doctrine or fuel concerns. Intelligence reports noted the pattern without understanding it. Sabre pilots developed techniques to exploit it, force the MiG into high-speed flight, watch it disengage, but didn't know why it worked. Now they know. The captured MiG-15 reveals what Soviet secrecy concealed. The superfighter has a kill switch built into its aerodynamics. Above Mach 0.86, the hunter becomes the hunted. The interceptor becomes the victim. American test pilots map the exact boundaries. Mach 0.86 at sea level. Slightly higher at altitude. The margins are razor thin. Soviet pilots fly constantly on the edge of disaster, forbidden to use their aircraft's full performance because using it means dying. The irony is perfect. Soviet engineers built the MiG-15 to kill American bombers at high altitude and high speed. But high speed kills the MiG-15 first. American intelligence photographs the test data, packages it, distributes it to every F-86 squadron still flying combat missions. Armed with this knowledge, American tacticians rewrite fighter doctrine overnight. The briefing reaches Korea within 72 hours. Fighter squadrons across the peninsula receive identical documents marked Secret Combat Information. Pilots crowd into briefing rooms expecting another update on patrol routes or target priorities. Instead, they receive the MiG-15's death sentence. Above Mach .86, the intelligence officer explains, tapping a chart, the MiG loses control authority. Complete loss. The aircraft departs controlled flight and enters a spin that kills most pilots before they can recover. Silence, then questions. How do we know this? We have one. We've flown it. We've tested it to destruction. The room erupts. For 3 years, American pilots fought an enemy they couldn't study. Every tactic was guesswork. Every engagement was incomplete intelligence. Now they have the blueprint. New doctrine spreads through squadrons like fire. If a MiG-15 engages, force it into a dive. Use the Sabre's superior roll rate to establish pursuit geometry. Push the enemy toward high speed. Don't try to outclimb it. You can't. Don't try to outturn it at low speed. You'll lose. Make the MiG pilot choose between breaking off or dying. Soviet training doctrine forbids high-speed dives. Chinese commanders enforce the restriction with court-martials. North Korean pilots follow orders because disobedience means execution. The MiG-15's performance ceiling is artificially lowered by fear. American pilots exploit that fear systematically. Captain James Jabara, already an ace with multiple kills, tests the new tactics first. He baits a MiG-15 into pursuit, then rolls inverted and pulls into a split S. The maneuver is dangerous in a Sabre, pulling serious G-forces and bleeding altitude fast. The MiG follows initially, then breaks off at Mach .84. Jabara pulls out at 12,000 feet. Looks up. The MiG is climbing away, refusing combat, unwilling to follow into the forbidden zone. They know, Jabara reports after landing. They absolutely know their aircraft will kill them. The tactic becomes standard procedure. Engage the MiG at altitude. Force separation. Push high-speed pursuit. Watch the enemy disengage every single time. What looked like superior discipline or fuel management was actually survival instinct. Soviet pilots knew their fighter had a mechanical death trap built into its design. Kill ratios shift dramatically. The F-86's advantage was already significant. Now it becomes overwhelming. MiG-15 still have better climb rates and heavier armament, but those advantages mean nothing if the aircraft can't be used at full performance. Pilot debriefs change tone. Before, the MiG outclimbed me and escaped. After, I forced him into a dive and he broke off at .85 Mach. I got guns on him before he could recover altitude. Soviet commanders noticed the change. American tactics suddenly exploit the exact weakness they've been hiding. Intelligence reports flow to Moscow. The Americans know. Somehow, impossibly, they discovered the MiG-15's high-speed instability. Investigations begin. How did the information leak? Which pilot talked? Which engineer defected? The paranoia spreads through Soviet aviation. No one suspects a 21-year-old North Korean lieutenant landed an intact MiG-15 at an American base. Chinese squadrons receive urgent directives. Avoid high-speed combat. Disengage immediately if Americans force pursuit. Prioritize survival over kills. The MiG-15 transitions from predator to prey in a matter of weeks. American bomber crews notice the difference first. MiG-15 attacks become less aggressive. Interceptors break off earlier. Formations penetrate deeper into hostile airspace before encountering resistance. The psychological effect is crushing. Soviet pilots know they're flying superior aircraft hobbled by design flaws. They know American pilots know. Every engagement becomes a test of who understands physics better. The Americans win that test, repeatedly, decisively. Not because the Sabre is better, it isn't, not in raw performance, but because American pilots can use their aircraft's full envelope while Soviet pilots cannot. The confident men who built the MiG-15 to terrorize American bombers watch their creation become a trap for their own pilots. But the MiG-15's greatest legacy isn't written in kill ratios. No Kum-sok becomes Kenneth Rowe. The name change is his choice. New identity, new country, new life. The U.S. government deposits $100,000 into his account. He uses it to study engineering at the University of Delaware, then MIT. He becomes an aerospace engineer, eventually working for companies that design the very aircraft that replaced the fighters he once flew against. He never returns to North Korea. His family never escapes. He lives with that weight for 70 years. The MiG-15 he delivered becomes the most famous Soviet aircraft in American hands. After Wright-Patterson's testing concludes, the Air Force flies it to air shows. Demonstration flights at Nellis Air Force Base. Static displays at air museums. Thousands of American pilots sit in the cockpit, touch the controls, see firsthand what they fought against. The message is deliberate. Soviet technology isn't mythical. It's knowable, beatable. Sometimes it's brilliant engineering undermined by political pressure and manufacturing shortcuts. Sometimes it's stolen British engines in a rushed airframe. Always, it's built by humans who make mistakes. That lesson echoes through the Cold War. When Soviet tanks roll into Hungary in 1956, American intelligence doesn't panic. They study the designs, find the weaknesses, develop counters. When the Soviets orbit Sputnik in 1957, America doesn't assume technological inferiority. They reverse engineer, innovate, and land on the moon 12 years later. The MiG-15 proves that Soviet secrecy is a weakness, not a strength. Hiding the high-speed instability didn't protect the design. It killed hundreds of Soviet-aligned pilots who died ignorant of their aircraft's limits. Refusing to share technical data with allies didn't preserve security. It created distrust and confusion. Meanwhile, American aviation culture moves in the opposite direction. Test pilot reports circulate openly. Engineering flaws are published and fixed. Pilots share tactical discoveries across squadrons. The F-86 Sabre evolves through combat experience into the F-100 Super Sabre, which becomes the F-4 Phantom, which becomes the F-15 Eagle. Each generation learns from the previous. Each design incorporates pilot feedback. No single aircraft is perfect, but the system improves constantly because information flows freely. Soviet design bureaus, by contrast, repeat the MiG-15's mistakes. The MiG-21 has departure problems at high angles of attack. The MiG-23's swing wing mechanism fails catastrophically. The MiG-25, designed to intercept the B-70 bomber that never enters production, uses vacuum tubes because Soviet transistors are unreliable. Every generation, Soviet engineers build impressive aircraft hobbled by secrecy, political interference, and manufacturing limitations. Every generation, American intelligence exploits those weaknesses. No Kum-sok's defection accelerates the pattern. One intact aircraft, one engineering analysis, one tactical revelation. The ripple effects last decades. When the Soviet Union collapses in 1991, MiG-15 still fly in second-tier air forces worldwide. North Korea operates them into the 2000s. The design is durable, simple, effective within its limits. But those limits are now public knowledge. Every Air Force knows the MiG-15 can't dogfight above Mach 0.86. Every pilot knows the Soviet superfighter had a fatal flaw Soviet commanders hid even from their own squadrons. Kenneth Rowe dies in 2022 at age 90. His obituary mentions the defection, the reward, the engineering career. It doesn't mention the hundreds of Soviet pilots who died in high-speed spins because their commanders valued secrecy over safety. The MiG-15 he delivered sits in the National Museum of the United States Air Force, restored, polished. A monument to the moment one pilot's desperate gamble exposed the cracks in Soviet military doctrine. Visitors walk around it, touch the fuselage, read the placard explaining its significance. Few understand the full story, that this aircraft changed Cold War aviation not through superior performance, but through the revelation of engineered weakness hidden by authoritarian pride. The confident men in Moscow would make the same mistake again.